Red light and bell. Good luck, studio.
Good luck, studio.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 69 of the Alexei podcast. And boy, have we got nothing to tell you.
It's the sex episode.
Yeah.
69, baby.
All that, yeah.
Yeah.
I've spent the earlier part of this week recording, because I don't know if I talked about this, but
you did, yes.
Yeah. So we did that.
Recording what?
The second volume of memoir. When it came out in 2016, Bloomsbury didn't do an audiobook version. I assume it wasn't considered viable then, but of course audiobooks since then have become huge. A big business. So I've just spent Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I was recording the audiobook version of Thatcher Stole My Trousers, and then presumably that will be up on Spotify and Audible and all the other places where you can get audiobooks.
How did it go?
It was fine, really. I mean, the first day is a bit, your voice needs to get used to talking for 5 hours, 6 hours straight.
Yeah.
Studio was very nice guys, relatively near me, 10 minute cycle right away. Guy uses the same barber as me, interestingly enough, and lives nearby. It was a slightly odd. I mean, it was an odd experience because I'd written it in 2015, I guess, 2014, 2015. So it was a 2014, 2015 view of my past, and I would kind of actually see if I wrote it now, it would be a very different book, I think, really. So it was weird looking back on your version of an earlier version of your past, I was once.
Did you have an opportunity to make any edits or anything like that?
Just
read it as is.
Just read it as is. There's a couple of bits actually I thought were now slightly. I took them out really because they didn't seem a good fit with the world of 2024. Just a couple of lines, But it was interesting. I remember I tried to make a bit out of it, but it's too complicated. But there was a clip show called I Heart the 1980s, I think, in which talking heads would come on and talk about the 80s. So these were maybe made in the 90s, and I did one or two, I think, for God knows what reason. But anyway, but then they re-showed them again in the 2000s. So it was bizarre to see celebrities who were 10 years later to sit in the 2000s watching celebrities like Muriel Gray, for instance, a friend of mine, giving her view of the 80s, and it looked, obviously it looked old-fashioned. I mean, the quality of the program that had been made in the 90s looked amazingly old-fashioned, and obviously the people looked 10 years younger. It was just a weird kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but it was just a weird kind of...
it's like a time warp of a time warp.
It was a weird kind of double time warp. Yeah, exactly. And I think I was also in a couple of them, and also some of the celebrities, you thought, who the bleeding hell are they? Because the people who'd been qualified to comment on the 80s in the 90s were now people in the 2000s who've been utterly forgotten, Yeah. The kind of, because obviously the kind of qualifications
they were like stars of the moment.
Yeah. And that stuff can often be very, very kind of fragile, So it's, who the fuck's that? And, where are they now kind of thing. Probably people were thinking that about me. I did write a column about it And I said, where are they now? People like Muriel Gray. And I said, well, actually, she's asleep in my spare room. But it was it was. Why was I talking about that? Oh yeah, so I was looking on. I was reading out a version of my life that I'd written in 2014, 2015, which I didn't entirely agree with anymore, really.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, it was I mean, I guess that's always the case. It's not acknowledged. I mean, there's a sort of, our culture insists that, the past is the past, and it's a kind of fixed thing where, and we are, who we are is also fixed. Whereas, of course, we are in a constantly fluid state. And I suppose that is one of the few things that could give us hope, on the left, is that people don't need to be as they are right now, I mean, I remember somebody saying somewhere about what Donald Trump offers people is the opportunity to be the worst possible version of themselves that they can, and Starmer, and obviously, Badenoch
gives you permission to be
that,
doesn't it?
They give you a kind of permission, or they encourage you to access those selfish, tribal, cruel. They give you an opportunity to be the absolute worst version of yourself that you could possibly be. And what should be a part of the offer from the left should be that we can offer you, left thought can offer you a way to be the absolute best version of yourself. That
Did you see
can
Trump's...
offer you a way to be kind and, kind of, to help people rather than just kind of circle the wagons and just protect yourself and your tribe, really. Yes, what you're saying about Mr. Trump?
Did you see his statement on the airplane crash in DC?
Yeah, it was, I mean, yeah.
I think if he was like listing, he was saying why it could have happened, and he was like, the pilot of the plane could have been, and then he listed like a list of disabilities, including dwarfism, and trying to say like that they hire in other countries anyone could be a pilot, and then he listed all these disabilities, and mixing together kind of ableism and racism into explaining why this crash happened, and I assume that gives people permission to think that way and feel that way.
He also said, I saw on the BBC that he used a profanity at some point as well. Which is an innovation. I mean, which is also an innovation. I don't know. The BBC was being very coy about it, but I know because my friend Oscar is Argentinian. He says Milei, who is a kind of South American mini Trump. Actually, he's that kind of heightened discourse. Milei swears all the time, and that's a way of making the discourse cruder and more
unprofessional.
I guess more confusing, I suppose, in a way. So,
well, that's probably what they thought about JFK when he was. I heard recently he was the first ever president to be inaugurated without wearing a hat.
Really,
he took his hat off when he made his pledge, and and people were outraged.
We've been on a slippery slope
since then.
But
that's a positive way of looking at it, that we are all malleable and changeable, and we can change our minds and behaviors.
I mean, there's a book. I mean, it's always you have to be careful when a comedian gets a book and then really kind of they believe in it. But a book that I really found amazing when I read it and still think is amazing is a book called Mistakes Were Made, But Not By Me. And what it basically talks about, I may have mentioned this before, is, it seems to give us unbelievable pain as human beings to admit that we were wrong, and that to admit that we did the wrong thing. And this book, it's a collection of social psychology experiments and research from across the world, really, just where people have, and for instance, they cite several studies where the police have arrested somebody for murder and they've been jailed or whatever, or executed, I don't know. And the police still insist that person is guilty even after the person they're supposed to have murdered turns up alive. But they still say, no, they did it. I mean, in human beings, we are, and it's just a really profound, it's a tremendous, it seems to go, and we will use drugs, alcohol, all kinds of distractions to stop ourselves from ever admitting that we were wrong. And we will also commit terrible crimes. And there was a really brilliant article in the long read in The Guardian yesterday or the day before, just about Germany's support of Israel and how and how that is very much linked to their Nazi past, which is also their Nazi present. And now it talks about how, all Germans think that their parents actually helped Jews, during the war, that their parents no, but it's a few thousand people in Germany who will admit that their parents were actually Nazis. There were more Nazi officials in power in Germany after the war than during the war. And there's this, and how their support for Israel sort of allows them to believe in this lie by saying that we have to, that we are now helping the Jews, and that it just, and to also say that the Holocaust was not just a product of ordinary human evil, but it was just some sort of exceptional event carried out by a very few people. And it's a tremendous article. I can't remember the name of the author, but it was really, it's obviously it's not just about Germany. It's about human beings everywhere and their inability to face the darkness of their own souls. And I say, yes, so what I would repeat is that's what should be very much the central offer of, it's not, we shouldn't in a way maybe on the left go on about, just either dry statistics or nationalizing war. We should go on about like nationalizing utilities and stuff like that, but we never talk about the why we're doing this stuff, why you shouldn't be racist. And it shouldn't be like a finger wagging thing. But if you stop being racist, I think we should say you will feel better. You will feel a sense of security, whereas before you felt a sense of threat. If you come to love your fellow human beings and also do good things for them, then you will feel so much better. And I think that's often the kind of, Jeremy tried it a bit, but the kind of spiritual aspect of what it is to be left, I think is should be a really central part of what we're offering, really. And often, sometimes it's not, it's just a kind of bland, kind of dreary kind of, I submit this motion before the executive committee. It really, it should be being left should be a much more spiritual thing. That it's not just that being anti-racist is the right thing to do, but it's just that you will feel better for doing it.
People don't want to be seen as like a. People don't want to be seen as like a hippy dippy kind. It's kind of such a made fun of thing that you're like,
that's
love,
what they want, isn't it? Yeah, it's not. But it's not even that. It's just
turning us into cartoon characters for wanting peace and justice and fairness.
Yeah. Whereas, but as I say, it will make you feel better
on a personal level.
Actually, no, it's at the moment it's bloody horrible being left wing in some ways. But if we lived in a left wing, if we lived in a world where our socialist vision came to fruition, then genuinely everybody would be happier. Supporting Trump or Starmer, vicious, cruel individuals. I saw Angela Eagle on just a caught a clip this morning, the lesser of two eagles. Just be saying, oh, well, we've deported 16,000, refugees. And what you're proud of that? That's a thing to be proud of. Yeah.
I saw an image online yesterday of, there's an image of a car park in America with lots of tents on it.
Right.
And then someone had captioned the image, this is what the world would look like under communism. And someone had taken that and then written a caption under that and said, no, this is literally the world under capitalism. Because it was a picture of a deportation camp in America.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you... This is actually a real image. Why are you creating a fiction out of something that's actually real? But to respond to what you're saying, on a personal level, apologizing, taking ownership of your misdeeds and like owning up to it and apologizing is really liberating and a kind of empowering thing to do.
Yeah,
and
when
changes,
you do
it gives you such, it removes shackles from your brain.
Yeah. When you just say, I was wrong,
The hardest part is like doing it, but then once you've done it, you become addicted to it almost.
Yeah.
You run around trying to find someone to apologize to.
And of course, one of the central things they talk about in Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me which is, you still see that, which is a mode of talking, isn't it? I apologize if anybody out there was offended by my words. It's that putting everything in a kind of...
It's your fault for being offended, but I'm sorry for you.
Yeah. But it's also, of course, what they talk about is, what they detail is Festinger's... the word cognitive dissonance is often misused, I think, but they talk in detail about Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance, which is that Festinger was a young social psychologist who embedded himself in the 1950s with a religious cult, I think the Seventh-day Adventists, who predicted that the world was going to end on a certain date. And he was surprised to find that when it didn't, those people who had not invested much, who hadn't sold their house or because the world was going to end, just kind of drifted away. But those who had committed the most to this idea that the world was going to end on a certain date didn't walk away from the church, from the cult, but in fact their belief increased. And they became even more fervent believers. And then the leader said, the world didn't end then because of this, but it will end now. And so it's that idea. And what it highlighted was that when people have invested so much in an ideology, any proof that ideology is false will not make them walk away from that ideology, but in fact will increase. I'm struggling to avoid the term double down, which I think is an Americanism, but that their belief in that ideology will not diminish. It will be doubled or tripled, and they become even more fanatical believers. And obviously you see that, and so rational argument doesn't necessarily work with these people, and you have to think of something. And you see that with, obviously with the Israelis clearly committing a genocide, but those who believe in Israel double or triple their belief, their actions, that it is...
Despite all evidence.
Despite all evidence to the
contrary. I'm thinking of the rioters last summer after the Southport tragedy. Horrific murders. That geezer who was taunting the police and then had a brick thrown at his head and then in his balls. He must be like the most racist person now.
Maybe, I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out what
he's in prison now, actually.
What he think? Oh, is he?
Right.
But it's a very good book. It's a really interesting. I mean, it's a bit, because it was written, I think, itself in the 90s. It's a bit, they tend to quote words of wisdom from Israeli generals a bit too often. But apart from that, it is an amazing read.
Who was it? You said it was written by a comedian, or were you talking about yourself being the comedian?
No, it was written by two social psychologists whose names I can't remember for the moment, but one is Jewish and one isn't.
You keep picking up a book. What you got there? Is that something you want to read
Also,
to
I
us?
might find it. Well, it's called Minority Rule by Ash Sarkar, and I will be interviewing Ash at the Comedia in Birmingham, I think, on the 23rd of February, and somewhere in Bath on the 22nd. And I'm doing a couple of interview things with. The only time I've done that before interviewing is Miriam Margolyes at the Cambridge Corn Exchange. I'm imagining that Ash won't ask me if I've been circumcised and tell stories about having random sex with men in cars, or farting. But
do you think maybe I could come along and maybe we could talk to one of or we could record a podcast in the green room or something with her?
Maybe it's her thing, really. I don't want to step on that, really. I'll see. I don't really want to make it about us. It's her event, really, and I'll have a think about that, but I sort of think you don't want to blur the lines, really. It's her event, and I'll be.
Were you circumcised?
No, actually, you Miriam Margolyes in disguise.
I thought I've been because of my Islamic heritage, and you were Jewish. I thought this could be the UK's premium circumcised podcast, but I guess
no,
it is episode 69.
Because my parents didn't. My parents didn't, believe in it. So
there's a big movement against it because you're kind of violating someone's body without their permission. Any thoughts?
And I think the health benefits are. Somebody once told me that the actor Alan Cummings is a big anti circumcision campaigner.
Oh.
I don't know whether that's true or not. But
what were you saying about the health benefits?
I think there were health benefits, but I don't think they're true. Really, they claim. I don't know. I don't really want it. This is.
What's your stance on foreskin, Alexei?
Yeah,
all right.
Think
okay,
probably, I agree. I probably agree with the answer. I don't know. I agree with the answer.
Yeah, I kind of do as well.
It is a kind of assault, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. Especially when they do it with their teeth. There are some really orthodox rabbis who do it with their teeth. Very small portion of them, but it's like extremely old, archaic tradition. You just bite it off.
Oh God, well, that doesn't sound right. But yeah, so I'm interested in her and what she represents, really, in terms of that whole new media. And I just started reading the introduction where she talks about her conversion to Marxism. So
she's an interesting person.
Yeah,
and a strong young voice. In the movement.
So I'm very much looking forward to that. It's kind of they're kind of lunchtime events. So people in Bath and Birmingham. I mean, I'm sure she's got a greater following than me, but if anybody wants to come along, that's when those events are. And yes, I'm very excited. I'd like to. I didn't feel like I meshed that well. I mean, I'm a great admirer in some ways of Miriam Margolyes, but yes, it's what my friend Harry used to call the Alta Kakas, the old shits. It's me, Miriam, and Michael Rosen represent Jewish anti-Zionism in the elderly.
No, you're not. But
it was a weird event. That anyway. I've talked for quite a while. I didn't think I was going to say anything. But
no. It's brilliant.
Yeah. It was
nice psychological.
Analysis. Maybe we could talk a bit more about mistakes we made. I would be happy to have an excuse to read it again.
Because if on it would be interesting, and maybe let me know who the authors are of that. Reach out. The idea of owning up to your mistakes. It feels so good on a personal level.
Yeah,
what it could do on a national scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and that's what that's what this article in the Guardian sort of says about Germany, that it's a kind of fake contrition that they have indulged in, really, which is not admitted to their crimes as such, but has instead replaced it with a kind of sentimental, and of course, a support for even great,
But it's not just
a
that.
new
It's
genocide.
It's not just the apology. It's like what you do. Like, I think the Queen at one point apologized for the Empire.
Did she?
It was, I think Britain has officially
Did she give it
apologized.
all the shit? Oh yeah,
That's the
exactly.
point.
Give
And
all the
then what?
shit
But we
back,
still
yeah.
have you still have your palace, and you still have all the jewels in your crown that were stolen from other countries. So what is that apology if you've not actually atoned for it?
Yeah.
And then like Germany made an apology for the war, but then they said, but then they didn't suggest maybe giving the Jews a home in Germany. They're like, oh no, that's fine. Go over there and have Israel.
Yeah.
Exactly. That wasn't even floated as an idea. It's like,
No.
we'll give you a nice part of Germany. We'll bring you back in. We'll integrate you. But obviously, that's probably the survivors of the Holocaust were probably like, that's the last place I want to go. I want to go. Maybe
Germany. But there is it's quite interesting. Again, in this article in the Guardian, it quotes Germans, sort of, kind of, talking about Israelis and saying no, they're like Aryans. They've got blonde hair and blue eyes, and I mean, clearly just reframing, just as in a way that the Germans. Made, because the Japanese, because they were their allies, kind of made them honorary Aryans, and they've done the same for the Israelis. Are now, are now being inducted into the ranks of the Übermensch, and obviously the Palestinians have been cast in the role of the Untermensch. And that's where we are. But Germany.
Right. I have a couple of updates before we get to Film Club, if you don't mind.
Yes.
All right. Regarding Lenin and the Rovers, as many people in the comments and a few in the emails pointed out, thank you for reaching out. You can email us at alexeisaylepodcast@gmail.com. Leave us comments on the YouTube video. We really appreciate it. And in our Patreon page, you can comment on the video editions now. By the way, every week there's a video edition of the podcast on our Patreon, and we have a nice community chat group as well. Patreon.com/AlexeiSaylepodcast. Support the show. Chuck a few quid our way. Patreon.com/AlexeiSaylepodcast. Be nice in the chat. Lots of people have informed me that Lenin and the Rovers is a lot more available than we thought. It's not just on Google Play, like I said last week.
Right.
You can get it practically everywhere. There's Audible. I think it's even on Spotify. So anyone out there wanting to listen to both series of Lenin and the Rovers, almost 4 hours of
I imagine it's kind of in and of itself, it's quite archaic, really. But
people have shown so much love for it. People have really enjoyed listening to it. So that's making a resurgence. Maybe
I enjoyed.
Could be a movie of it.
I enjoyed recording it, really, and the producer of it, Harry Thompson, was somebody who died quite young. Really, he was an interesting. I remember he did just before he died, and he was Oxford and all that stuff, but he did a really interesting animation series. I remember it had a serial killer in it that rode about on that. What's that sort of?
Was it Monkey Dust? People were mentioning
Monkey
Dust. Yeah, there was lots of love for Monkey Dust.
Really interesting series. I thought fascinating, and because Harry died, I think partly it just didn't get like a second series, but full of really interesting, very dark characters. The serial killer who wrote about on a space hopper and stuff. I think some of the early work of maybe the Peep Show guys. But I thought there was an interesting kind of confluence of animation techniques and quite dark writing. Anyway, then he died.
Rest in peace, Harry. Monkey Dust.
Loss,
sounds
sick.
I'm going to check that out.
Yep.
Okay, and then AJ, our friend who was involved in some Palestine actions, reached out. This is she got sentenced yesterday. Remember that she was fighting a charge for affray.
Yes.
She got a 12-month community order. with up to 25 rehabilitation activity requirement days.
Right.
She's fine with that. It was what she was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is interesting. So after the case closed, her barrister said to her that her barrister's dad told the barrister that we mentioned her on the show. So basically, her barrister's dad is a listener of the show. So hello, barrister's dad.
Yeah.
So
It's a brief.
AJ asked me to let him know
Right.
that his daughter did an amazing job. Her legal team worked very hard for her. She's had so much support from members of her community in Manchester, from people showing up to court throughout the trial, staff at the courts showing love and appreciation, making it a lot easier for her. It was a very humbling experience. She couldn't have done it alone. She's happy for me to update the listeners.
Yeah, no, that's really, I'm glad. I mean, obviously she shouldn't have been arrested or charged, or anything, but that's a relative. I mean, probably Starmer will be spitting feathers about the decency and the proportionality of that sentence, which is, which is about right, I would guess. And I say she's never been charged in the first place, but that Yvette Cooper will maybe try and get that sentence increaserated. I don't know. I hope that's the end of that. But yeah, just nice that barrister's dad listens.
And her sentence is to do more for her community, which is just could be what.
Yeah.
But AJ says to tell the listeners, always keep fighting, love and solidarity to all. Big up AJ, big up Palestine.
Yeah, absolutely. They do amazing work.
I have one last update for you. I'm really sorry to bring this up, but the Lego Alexei saga continues.
All right.
I'm so sorry. So if you remember, the winner of the last Lego Alexei was someone on Apple Podcast Reviews who reviewed the podcast.
Yeah.
They called themselves Heisenberg BB.
Yeah.
It's actually someone called Bob. And Bob says, as an act of solidarity, please auction the Lego figure and donate to the cause.
Okay.
He'll start the bidding at £5.
Okay.
So bloody hell, I guess the auction is open. This Lego Alexei is going to be trying out for so fucking long.
Yeah.
Shall we give it a month?
Yeah.
Highest bidder.
£5. Do I have £5? Do I have £6? £6. Do I have £6?
It's just on £5.
23.
So, listeners, comments, emails, Patreon messages, give us your bids. Beat £5. Highest bid in the next month.
£5.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, do it in the background. Next bidder, person who bids highest bidding, we'll take your money and we'll donate it to MAP.
Maybe, yes. Actually, with that, because we need to finish by 12:30, I've got the MAP have won a slot in the Radio 4 appeal, I think, in May. Maybe Radio 4 appeal, which is... it's a very useful fundraising tool, and I'm going to be voicing it, so I'm going to be talking to them about the details of that. I've done it once before. I did it for the Simon Community, which is a homeless charity.
But what does that entail?
But obviously MAP is a very medical aid for Palestinians, a very important cause, and they will be taking part in the Radio 4 appeal. I think it's fairly distant, but
so is that like a call-in fundraising show?
Yeah, it's like no, I think it's just I can't remember. It's like it's just an appeal which is broadcast
on Radio 4,
and maybe several times with
nice
a story about I think it's a story about the work that they do, obviously, which has become more and more vital over the last year and a bit. And I will be doing the voice for that anyway because of my mellow tones.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful news. So,
Yeah,
do you think
it's a bit distant in the future, but just MAP is always a charity absolutely worth supporting.
so shall we donate the Lego Alexei funds to MAP? Anything we raise?
Yeah, why not?
All right. Okay, sounds good. All right, start the bidding now. That's my update. Is it time for the Alexei Film Club?
Film Club.
Film Club! Ba-bum!
Yeah, we could do. Yeah, why not?
Good. All right.
I watched. Yeah. I mean, actually, the story I was going to tell about is not directly connected with but I was last year. I think it was last year. I did the Lawn Festival. Was it the year before? Christ. Which is a festival I've done a lot. It's in Lawn in South Wales, where Dylan Thomas had his holiday shack, and that's it's the setting for Under Milk Wood is essentially the village, the town of Lawn. But the last when I did it, one of the other performers was Robin Asquith from the most famously known from the Confessions of series of the Confessions of a Window Cleaner, Confessions of a Taxi Driver, these sorts of.
Was he the actor or the director?
He was the actor. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, and we just shared a car with him to Swansea, I think, and then the train back to London, and we had such a lovely time talking to him. He seems such a sweet guy that it's just one of those really magical encounters which sort of do happen. A few of those, like Saul Williams, that happen at literary festivals. But he was just such a and really interesting in a way. And he had this. He was actually born in Southport. Caught polio when he was 9 and was in hospital for a year, but anyway, he sort of, because he's a very good-looking young man, and he first of all had this career he worked with Lindsay and his first film role, I think, is as a character Keating in If, but he'd worked with Pasolini and he'd worked with all these interesting directors. Then he made, I think, probably the terrible mistake of starring in these series of kind of soft porn British films.
Yeah.
And then if you look at his filmography on Wikipedia, it sort of stops at 1988 and doesn't, in terms of movies, and doesn't start again until 2010 or something. So, I mean, it was clearly they were so. I hope he got well paid for them. But anyway, now he lives on the island of Gozo, and that is also where they filmed the Madame Blanc mysteries for Channel 5. And he's
the island
he's a series,
of what?
Gozo. It's next to Malta.
Okay.
And that's where they film it. So they film it on the island he lives on. And I think it's a big success for Channel 5. It's supposed to be set in France, but it's actually filmed on Gozo. And he's a series regular in that, a series reg, as we say in the business. And but I just thought it was. I thought it was. That's my connection with that
If.
film. Really, is with If is Robin Asquith. I just want to talk a little bit about that.
He's done a lot recently as well. Yeah,
he's sort of his career
Inside
is now
Number 9
revived. Yeah,
Corrie, Hollyoaks. Okay, a lot of soaps. He's Doctors.
Yeah.
Oh, he narrates a documentary about Gozo.
Okay.
And he was in U5.
He's also in. He was in that film. That's right. Yeah, he's also in that weird documentary that Stuart Lee made about that Birmingham band. He's in that, and he actually. Oh, yeah. It's weird because everybody in that's been filmed in like Cumberland or somewhere, but he said he filmed it himself and then just sent it to Stuart in the way that you can do these days.
Yeah.
Um,
Robin Asquith.
yeah, so
Joe, I bet
he
he's
was a
got some
nice,
stories.
very, very, very sweet man.
I'm trying to remember who Keating was in If.
Yeah, I can't really remember. The character's name is used at some point. I did, because I was looking out for him. I didn't recognize the younger him. But anyway, it's I don't know what I mean. I don't know. What did you think of it?
Well, you always make fun of my intros, so I'm not doing one this week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You don't get one. But it's about God. It's kind of a metaphor for like anti-imperialist revolution, kind of in the guise of kind of a school shooting, basically.
Yeah. I did think that in a way that I just thought, it's funny. I did have that. I thought this is actually a school shooting.
Yeah,
which
really
is,
shocked me at the end there.
Yeah, which is kind of you didn't know that was coming. You didn't. No. I wonder how that's kind of stands up in the modern world.
It was shocking, but when I read the description of the film before I pressed play, I thought, oh, okay, he's going to start kind of a revolution and get all the boys to kind of tie up the teachers and take over the school and like, you know, throw pies at each other and stuff. But they literally just find a stash of assault rifles, go up on the roof and just start shooting everyone.
Not assault rifles. There's a brand. There's 9mm Stens, and I think
they have a mortar.
38 Webley. Yeah, they have a mortar, and
and the girl has the gun that I want in the revolution, remember? Or when we start a socialist army and we get to pick our own weapons.
Which one? The
it looked like
revolver.
A Magnum kind of thing. Yeah, it was a revolver.
Yeah, it's 38 Webley, I think. Or possibly in 44.
So you've got this boarding school, and it's just called College House. It's part of a wider school, but they're in college.
In fact, the guy that was recording my audiobook had gone there, interestingly enough.
Bloody hell.
It's looking at in Wikipedia, it's actually an agglomeration of quite a lot of different locations. Because you thought, how did these public schools allow them to film this here? So it's actually quite a few different, but it's basically Cheltenham College, I think, or something like that. It's in Cheltenham anyway.
And it didn't look period. It looked of the time. So it's made in 1968. Do you think it was set in 1968?
Yeah. Oh, it's very 1968. Were you alive then? No, you weren't, were you?
Hell no.
No. It reeked of... I mean, actually, I was impressed that the print was very clean. It looked really crisp, and the sound was good.
Must have been remastered.
Which is not... Yeah, it must have been remastered, but
it's perfect,
very well done.
So it's set in this boarding school. It's very boarding schooly, so it's like boys all on top of each other.
Yeah, you do think that's what our ruling class, that's how they are brought up, you know, and what a kind of horrible, perverted kind of atmosphere it is.
Like from very young age, putting like pornographic images pinning them up on their little walls, making fun of each other's bodies and ethnicities and lots of bullying but then also a lot of camaraderie amongst the boys as well. And you get a kind of, there's a B story of like the younger, like the year sevens basically, and like there's a new boy, Jute, being guided through the school, and I guess that's kind of the audience's conduit into like.
But none of this is done in a particularly linear or conventional way, is it? It's very I mean, also that thing of, you know, pictures of Che Guevara and the war in Vietnam, and it did bring. I remember it was before I lived in London, but I remember visiting London for demos and seeing the poster which was featured the hand grenade very prominently, and just thinking, wow, London, man, this is great. It's also the first screen performance, certainly by Malcolm McDowell. You think, what an extraordinary,
absolutely
screen presence he is. Just that.
He's got like smile, this ballet dancer energy about the way he moves, and he's so graceful and precise with his movement.
Yeah, and then this is what I mean.
Character. Yeah. Well, and so you've got him and his two mates. They're older kids. They're in sixth form, and they're kind of the main characters of the story. Yeah. and they are like the rebels of the school, and they're the ones with like the Vietnam War pin-ups in their little hangout room. They smoke, they drink vodka, they escape from the school, go into town at one point, and they slowly become more and more rebellious until it reaches the crux of the film, which is the kind of shoot 'em up that we mentioned, because they are punished for who they are.
Yeah.
They are made examples of. They're punished quite severely, and so that triggers them to shoot up the place. Now, that's the description of the film. The teachers are cunts. Most of them. There's a couple of cool characters in there.
Oh, it's also a thing I meant. Yeah, but it's also Arthur Lowe, Captain Mannering, of course, is in there, and it'd be interesting. He chose some apart from Dad's Army, he did some really interesting work, Arthur Lowe, and maybe look into that a bit more.
Who did he play in that?
He was the sort of housemaster. He wasn't. He's not in it much, but you see a scene where he's sitting up in bed and his wife's playing the flute.
Mrs. Kemp is playing the flute, and it's very like low, kind of traditional song, and it can be heard throughout the building.
Yeah, but he's an interesting. He did quite a few kind of alternative. The Ruling Class. He's also in which he has a major role. So it'd be interesting to know. I saw him in Panto the day before he died.
Oh my God!
Mother Goose at the Victoria Palace Theatre, I think it was.
Just before
Ian Lavender. He didn't look well. But it's interesting those people could move between sitcom. I mean, these sitcoms that got 22 million viewers at the.
Well, that's who they hired for sitcoms. Were these like thespian sorts? At the time, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think he liked to drink as well.
You got the whips of the house, which are like. So what? Explain what a whip is. Are they students or not? Are they graduates? What's going on?
No, they're students. It's a system that they also. I think they still have at places like Eton, which is that the boys in the upper sixth get a lot of privileges, and they're the paramilitary force that maintains discipline. Really, it's they're the Guardia Civil of the Carabinieri of the school. Really, they and they get a lot of privileges. They they have their own kind of room. They call them scum, don't they? In that,
no, they call the little ones scum.
Yeah, they're their servants. The ones you're scumming for partridge now or whatever. Yeah, they call it fag. I don't know whether they still do it, Ian, but you'd be somebody's fag, and you'd start out. It's a way to, it's
and they are very kind of inappropriate with these boys. There's a scene where he's like being really flirtatious about the boy, and it's really. And the scum in question, Bobby Phillips is his name. I thought that's Keir Starmer when he was a boy. He looked like him, and then there was a scene where he's like, "I want to become a lawyer when I'm older."
He's very pretty, but a terrible, terrible actor.
No, he wasn't.
He's so bad in that scene with the other boy who's the gymnast. And
they end up, I think they fancy each other.
Yeah. It's yes. I mean, it's rather lyrical where Bobby Phillips is watching the boy who's one of the gang, isn't he? And I guess it's a double, but he just does this gymnastics on a bar, kind of what you call it, and it's just it's you can see the kind of the love or the desire.
So not the parallel bars, but like the higher one where you're fully swinging around it, and then you jump off at the end. He does this amazing routine on it, and
it's
they're looking at each other, very lustfully.
Yeah,
well, it's more romantic than lustful.
Romantically, let's not sully it.
Nothing crude actually happens visually in the film.
No,
it's all like looks and maybe a touch. But actually, apart from with the girl, there's the naked wrestling moment. Very brief
of naked wrestling. In there, and he steals a BSA motorbike.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what's BSA? Hey, I've never heard of that brand.
Have you never heard?
No.
BSA, Birmingham Small Arms Company. So they manufactured rifles and air rifles, but they also manufactured
Wow.
motorbikes. I mean, I'm not a huge expert on motorbikes, but I noticed that one, for instance, it's a 68, but it still had drum brakes at a time when I would have thought comparable Japanese model would have had disc brakes by then. They were all. I think the BSA factory might have been taken over and operated, or was that the Norton factory was taken over and operated as a workers' cooperative for a while. They made these bikes which had been the most dominated the world in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, but by the 60s they were starting to be Triumph, Norton, BSA. They'd started to be overshadowed by Japanese machines, which were much more reliable and much cheaper and much more technologically advanced. But they did. When they're in that motorbike showroom, they look so beautiful. All those,
yeah,
those British machines. You could see the attraction. Really, they were exquisite. Just the look of them, really, and that.
So describe that scene. What happens?
Well, they go into a motorbike showroom and then just steal a bike, really. Then they ride it for a bit, and then they call into a kind of roadside cafe, and the unnamed girl is working there, and then there's a bit of sort of embarrassing kind of mime, or I don't know what you call it, really. Looks a bit like something you do in a theatre workshop, apart from the naked bit. And then I did think at that point, what we make actors do sometimes. It's so embarrassing. I think. And then
he
they
forces a kiss on her.
Yes,
and then she slaps him.
Yeah.
But then later you think, oh, were they kind of role playing? Do they already know each other?
Yeah, that you could see that from the lens of 2024 as being quite dubious, really. Anywho, so then three of them got ride off on this BSA, and then there's a scene riding across the field, and the girl's sort of standing up on the saddle, and then
it's beautiful. The shots of them riding the bikes are really well done.
It is, yeah. It's very. I mean, I was impressed with the clarity and it's beautifully framed.
Oh, the movement of the camera. Hats off to the cinematographer. There's a shot of them going round a roundabout, and the camera is clearly placed in the center of the roundabout, and it just tracks them so perfectly, and it just looks so gorgeous. I
noticed my friend Stephen Frears was listed as an assistant on it. Really.
Oh, great.
It's, related to become probably Britain's most successful film director.
So we have to mention the series of black and white scenes that are scattered throughout the film.
Yes, I think they were taken to be. I don't know. They were taken to be just very arty, but in fact, I think. Well, I read on Wikipedia. I thought it was just because they ran out of money and black and white stock was cheaper than color stock, but Wikipedia says that it was just easier to light. Obviously it was just
darker scenes.
Well, there were scenes. I think the first scene that they shot in black and white was in the big kind of church, and that it's a lot easier to light that for black and white rather than color. Really.
Oh, I thought there was some symbolism there. I by the end I thought that all the black and white scenes were fantasies.
Yeah.
But then
I think it's just economics. I know. They kind of made a virtue of it, I think. I think Lindsay Anderson liked it and did choose to use it, to use it artistically. That first of all, it was an economic decision, and then it became an aesthetic one.
All right. I thought they were either fantasies or they were all the scenes that had something to do with romance in them.
I don't think there's any. It's all completely random.
Oh, because there's the black and white scene where Mrs. Kemp is walking around the school naked while none of the boys are there. There's but then there's this black and white scene of some of the little boys having a fry up, which isn't either fantasy or romantic.
Exactly. I don't know.
But when they're rolling around on the floor naked, which clearly was a fantasy, that didn't actually happen.
Right.
He was imagining it. That was black and white.
Right.
And then there's a black and white scene of the older boy with baby Keir Starmer in bed together, not doing anything, just kind of lying there arm in arm.
Yeah. I don't know.
And also the name of the film, If, is what kept putting this fantasy idea in my head. I don't think the shooting happened.
Right.
I don't think a lot of the extreme situations actually happened in the narrative. Right. I think they were just projected fantasies of the main characters. Because that's the last thing. He's like shooting up the school, people dying, and then it just goes to black and it says if. Like, so it's like, what if this was reality?
I didn't really read much kind of critical appraisal of what people thought it was about. I mean, it was very of its time. You would see, every week you would see films are sort of a bit like that. I mean, in a sense, it was. I mean, particularly now when movies are so kind of banal and just all exactly the same.
Oh yes,
I mean, Marvel really fucking I mean, they're just all so awful, and they're so lacking in any kind of interesting thought. Whereas a lot of movies in the cinema in the late 60s and early 70s were full of innovation and experimentation. That's the word I'm reaching for.
Yeah, back when films were allowed to, but that's before they would cost $500 million to make, and that's why people had room to experiment because they didn't have to ensure it would be a success. Which the only thing that does is ensure it's a boring kind of run of the mill, same as every other film situation.
Yeah. It said he was very influenced by Jean Vigo, and it's a long time, I think, back at art school since I've seen a Vigo film. But Zazie Dans la Metro, I think, most famous of his films. But again, I think that they were, there was a great deal of, and people were doing things for the first time, things. There was still, they were you feel sometimes like everything's been done now. You might as well stop. There are literally no stories left to tell. Seeing as every movie he's a CIA assassin, a special forces assassin living in the suburbs. You see that fucking idea?
No, but shit can. Things can still. They're just not allowed to try anything new. Risks aren't allowed to be made anymore unless you're just doing it yourself with your own money or small investors.
Yeah.
If you're doing any studio project, you're not allowed to take any risks, and that is sad. But there are new ideas. We're convinced now that all ideas have been done. They've not. We're just not allowed to do them, and that's the annoying part. But,
except here on this podcast.
Exactly, Le Mondo.
Yeah.
Speaking of Scum, it reminded me of the film Scum, which wasn't made until 11 years later.
Yeah.
But apart from the word scum being used,
in a sense, a different tradition. But Lindsay Anderson was also. He'd made This Sporting Life with Robert Harris, which was about Richard Harris, which is about rugby, and it was in it was in that sort of Saturday night and Sunday morning loneliness of the long distance runner. It was that new wave of British filmmaking. Working class themes, and also, of course, he did a lot of. And I remember actually, I saw quite a few of them. He directed a lot of plays at the Royal Court in the early 70s.
Very different to our last film, Broadcast News, in terms of tone and pace and dialogue.
Yes.
But I'd say, it's much more artistic, as we discussed. Not more experimentational, and less clean, but. Only to a degree. The performances were outstanding. Those whips were so hateable. The guy, the upper sixth form guys, fucking loathsome.
David Cameron.
It prompted me to look up like something a bit morbid, but I ended up finding something quite funny out of it. I wanted to look up when did the first school shooting in America happen, because this film was from 1968, and I was wondering, are they inspired by American school shootings? Because it took me by such surprise, that last scene. But so I looked up oldest school shootings in the USA.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've been happening since the 1760s was the first one.
Really?
But it was 1764 in Pennsylvania, 11 deaths. This one's sad, it's not funny, but the Enoch Brown School, 4 Native Americans entered the school and shot the teacher and scalped him, and then they scalped 10 students and beat them to death. Yeah, so I'm sure that was like, they must have built a school on their land or something. Or,
yeah.
But awful. But then there are a couple weird ones. Then there isn't another one till the 1800s, when it just seemed like everyone had a gun and it was really normal to just have a gun. A lot of these are just like a boy was showing off his gun and shot someone by accident. Right. One of them in 1856, the schoolmaster warned students not to harm his tame sparrow, threatening death. One of the boys stepped on the bird and killed it. When the boy came back to school, the master took the boy into a private room and strangled him. And then the boy's father went to the school and shot the guy.
Blimey.
Yeah. In 1867 in Buffalo, New York, 13-year-old Arthur Day secretly took a loaded pistol to his school to shoot a dog he said had bitten him. But while playing with the pistol, he accidentally shot his mate. Injured. These aren't all deaths.
Right.
These aren't all deaths.
Yeah.
This one. This is an injury as well, not a death. In 1872, at the All-Girls Union School, 17-year-old Thomas McGiffin shot and wounded the principal because the principal refused to deliver a Valentine's Day note to one of the girls.
Long history of gun-related craziness in the United States then.
Surprise, surprise. But is it normal for schools to have a stock of guns like we saw in this film?
Yeah, because for the OTC, the Officer Training Corps, yeah.
That's what that was it? Yeah, because there's a whole section of the film where they're all wearing army uniforms.
Yeah, no, public schools, yeah. They're a mess up, yeah. They'll have 303 Lee Enfields, and they were maybe a bit more elaborately armed than normal, but it was you'd have I suppose a stock of live ammunition as well somewhere on the premises. I mean, most of it would be blanks, obviously. Yeah, but they were training sharpshooting and shit like that.
I'm surprised there weren't more shootings in British schools. I'd never heard of one happening.
But it was all locked away, You couldn't really get your hands,
Well, this Wikipedia page, list of school shootings in the United States before 2000, is full of really crazy little stories, often like mini stories of like crimes of passion and like little miniature glimpses into these children's lives.
Well, I mean,
then it gets depressing in the 90s. It gets really depressing. Stop reading before that point. Right. We've done our film club.
I'd be interested to hear what the listeners think
about our film.
Your view, your views are moderately important to me.
I wanted you guys to message us questions and opinions before we did film club. I have to say, disappointing turnout from our listeners. So from our readers, do better, children. And we've got a couple of weeks to decide what our next film is.
Yeah.
Send in your thoughts on If. I know a lot of people out there watched it.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's time, Lex.
Yeah.
Love you.
I love you too.
That was
Habibi.
Fun. Habibi. Oh, wait. Fuck the tax man this year, I have to say. And solidarity to all self-employed people out there who had to do their own taxes. They surprised us with a new rule this year.
Did they? It's a Starmer.
Very last minute. But now we are paying I don't fully understand this because it all just came crashing on my head. But you have to pay the next year's taxes based on an estimate according to the previous years. But because this is the first time it's happened, because it's the first time it's happened, I've had to pay both years' taxes in one go.
That's terrible. I don't know what the hell's going on.
I don't understand. If anyone out there can explain to me this new rule about the taxes, it has ruined my fucking week, amongst other things. I've had a really bad week, and this hour with you, Alexei, has been the highlight of my week, I have to say.
I'm glad.
And you, listeners. It's always a pleasure to be in your company.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, somebody can, if we have an accountant amongst us, maybe they can tell us what the fuck, what up with that, yo?
What up with that, please?
Yeah.
All right.
I better go because I got this phone call. All right. Bye. You've been listening to the Alexei and Talal podcast. This show is produced and edited by Talal Karkuti. Music by Tarbush Records. Thanks to Audio Boom for hosting us. Please keep your emails coming in at alexeisaylepodcast@gmail.com. Goodbye.